We are in Africa. We're in Africa, and I'm seeing lots of water.
Than 2 million people across the Horn of Africa displaced by torrential rains and floods. This based on a tally of government and UN figures. Almost 300 people have also lost their lives as the region grapples with this latest devastating climate disaster.
I'm seeing, more than one country. There are more than one country. Again, as I explained, I'm seeing a lot of water in Africa. So many countries are going to be hit with flood.
Well, we begin in the Horn of Africa, where flooding continues to wreak havoc in countries including Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia.
Burundi, Sudan, South Sudan, and Uganda are all bearing the brunt. But Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia are the worst hit.
Well, let's go to the Central African Republic, where torrential rains have caused significant flooding in the capital, Bangui.
Now, this is a lot of water. This is not like low water or just like general flooding.
Thousands of people are trapped in flooded areas following heavy rains in Somalia's Jubaland state, the UN's humanitarian agency says. The heavy rains, which began last month, have elevated the water levels on the Juba River.
According to the United Nations, the flooding has been described as the worst in decades and has displaced about 700,000 people.
The main problem is the accessibility. In some areas, bridges have been collapsed, and in some areas, the airports are also damaged or have been destroyed.
Now, this is a lot of water. This is not like low water or just like general flooding. This is a lot of water.
Now, heavy rains are causing extreme flooding in what the UN calls a once-in-a-century event, threatening the lives and livelihoods of at least 4.3 million people.
Further west of the country, villages had been surviving on higher ground.
We climbed trees. The whole night until morning, we were beating jerry cans as a means to call for help. We put babies and the elderly in beds and on trees and slopes.
We have so far rescued over 400 people from the locations that are completely submerged by the water as a result of the heavy rains that was witnessed over the last week, and even the river Juba that has also burst its bank.
Somalia's information minister said the floods, which also affected Hirshabelle and southwest states, have caused widespread damage. He appealed for support, adding that the situation was critical. The country is experiencing heavier than normal rains after emerging from one of its worst droughts in 4 decades.
I'm seeing lots of water. Lots of water, lots of water.
Since late October, heavy rains in the highlands of south and southwest Ethiopia have caused the river to overflow and flood 34 administrative wards and 7 islands. Look at this. It shows a flood caused by the Omo River. The water has receded, but it used to cover the whole village. The people who lived here fled to a place called Kelem Hulet, fearing for their lives.
In November of last year, UNICEF say that 7.6 million children were out of school in Ethiopia as the country encountered natural and man-made calamities. Some 833,000 affected people need humanitarian support.
Ethiopia and Uganda have recorded unusually heavy rains.
Also, I'm getting Kenya.
Kenya is facing its worst floods in decades. 500,000 people, as you said, a little over 500,000 people have been affected, including over 160 people, now I guess 174, that have tragically lost their lives, with over 100,000 families who've been displaced.
But with the Kenya, I have been getting it for quite a few days now, and it's still repeating now. I don't know why.
The situation was also dire in neighboring Kenya, where deadly floods swept through entire towns and villages.
The road was totally cut off after floods destroyed the approach road on the Mombasa side. Another section of the highway was submerged and rendered impassable at Mtondia, a few kilometers from Kilifi town.
Garissa, once a bustling hub on the border with Somalia, is at the mercy of nature. The Mwingi-Garissa Road, a vital link to Nairobi, was submerged and now lies in ruins.
The heavy downpour affected several estates in Nairobi, leaving most of them, including the central business district, flooded. Motorists were forced to seek alternative routes to avoid heavily flooded roads in the city, with business premises not spared either.
But with Kenya, I don't know if it's about a flood.
In Kenya's coastal city of Mombasa, people evacuated from a flooded bus on Friday crossed the street by holding onto a rope in chest-high water. Many, like this woman, couldn't move and begged the government to intervene.
There's a lot of water that's going to happen in Africa, by the way.
A team from Sept, the elephants organization, came to their rescue. The chopper, operated by a skilled rescue team, navigated the turbulent skies to reach the trapped occupants. The areas affected include Martiki, Wanjandege, Pakistan, Odola, Labarok, and Anjeli.
This is the entrance to northeastern Kenya, Garissa town. The Tana River has risen above its cage, burst its banks, submerged homes, and marooned the only road leading to other parts of the country.
Approximately 5,000 residents of the villages of Msambweni and Kaloleni in Voi constituency have been affected by the heavy rainfall after the Voi River broke its banks. Homes and belongings of the residents have been submerged, and the Kenya Red Cross is conducting an operation to rescue marooned families.
Because I'm getting a strong feeling an incident is going to happen in Kenya.
This is the aftermath of torrential rains that have hit northeastern Kenya in the last few days. Towns and villages are flooded.
Families have been forced to evacuate and seek shelter on safer grounds.
The floods were unforgiving. Our houses are gone. Our farms are gone. Utensils gone. We have lost lives.
Kenya, I don't know what's going to happen. So I'll say be prepared, but I don't know what's happening in Kenya. There's a strong thing with Kenya that's going to happen.
More than 170,000 people have been forced from their homes by floods here in Kenya. Many had to swim or wade to the safety of higher ground, where they're staying in camps. Some didn't make it. Many of the flooded communities are now only accessible by air.
From the helicopter you can really get a sense of the scale of these floods, and all along the banks of the Tana River, thousands of farms have been submerged, the crops destroyed, and this comes off the back of one of the worst droughts in this region in about 40 years.
As I explained, I'm seeing a lot of water in Africa, so many countries are going to be hit with flood.
Well, let's go to the Central African Republic, where torrential rains have caused significant flooding in the capital, Bangui. In riverside neighborhoods, residents are facing considerable material losses. Streets have been turned into waterways and houses submerged. People are getting around in dugout canoes.
Ngadegi Jocelyn lives in the city Atib area, located south from Bangui, the capital of the Central African Republic. It has been a few days since the man who is disabled has been forced to go about on a pirogue. The Ubangi River overflowed following heavy rainfall. As of now, thousands of residents have to do on their own as state assistance is slow to come. Fears of waterborne diseases have been mounting. The very poor have remained inside houses at risk of collapse.
Africa, water, lots of water. Just be prepared for water. I know Africa is a continent. I know that.
And in Uganda, a bridge has been submerged. This has cut off a road linking Kampala to oil fields in the northwest. The Kenya Red Cross and Uganda's road authority said.
Before, it cannot cross. But right today, it has crossed, and it has even affected police too much in other places and the market as well.
Embeera bwetibwa eri mu katawuni k'Elevu akasangibwa ku nsalo ya Uganda n'eggwanga erya South Sudan oluvannyuma lw'omugga Onyama okuwaguza. Bizinesi ezisinga zisanyaladde olw'embeera eno, amaduuka mangi galabiddwako nga gatubidde mu mazzi.
Residents living near the bridge in Kalongo village on the side of Chankwanzi have been affected, and some have fled their homes after their houses were submerged.
Nailo ugamba litugali gatuuka eri kati gagenze gatendera obw'okugyamu ebitoogo bino. Engeri bajjamu ebitoogo amazzi gano gagenda okutendera tibitoogo bulungi. Naye makati eri bamaze kumenyekamu gundi amazzi gabadde gayitanga kukola ki.
Over 24 homesteads have been affected.
Bayambeko baddukirira abantu bano bali bubi, abaana basula enjala.
River Kafu burst its banks and flooded one section of Hoima-Kampala Highway on Monday following a heavy downpour. Transport and movement of people and goods across the flooded section of the road has been paralyzed.
There's a lot of water that's going to happen in Africa, by the way.